Alright guys, first off, Happy New Year to all of you. I hope 2021 is the best year yet. I know for one, I'm going to be putting out a lot of content this year. Thank you so much for all the responses I've gotten here lately, from the streaming to the videos and everything in between. I posted a couple things yesterday as far as video ideas, things like that. I listened, I heard you guys. I have one for you though today that y'all didn't mention. For more, make sure you stay tuned right after this. Alright guys, here we are again. New video for 2021. It's something I never ever talk about. Most guys out here don't talk about this particular topic, and that's the magic depth. That's right, the magic depth. Now, let me preface this with every season has a different depth, but what I'm really referring to is like from about the pre-spawn all the way to the spawn and into the summer. So, the magic depth can be perceived as a lot of different things. In this particular situation, it means one thing to me, and that is where the bass are at right now. You know, one thing about it is the bass aren't always in the exact same depth, whether it's shallow, deep, or everywhere in between. But today, I'm going to give you a little inside information on exactly what I do to target specific depths for specific bass. Now, let me just go ahead and tell you, you can catch bass from 1 foot of water to 50 foot of water in a given day on a given body of water. However, are those going to be the right bass for what you're doing? If you're just going out there fun fishing, having a good time, absolutely. They're going to be great for you. They're going to do exactly what you need them to do. They're going to catch some bass. However, if you're in a tournament situation, that is not always the case. In a tournament situation, I'm looking for the 5 right fish. I want the 5 biggest bass that I can catch in a given day, and the only way to do that is target the right depth. So if I'm in the pre-spawn, if you look, I'll give you a perfect example. Look back at a tournament that happened over the weekend. A guy caught 40 pounds on Sam Rayburn in a BFL over there. If you look at anything that those guys were doing, I know a lot of those guys know the guy who won it. You look at the guys that are in the top 10 that had that 12 to 15, 16, 17 pounds. I can tell you primarily, without even talking to them, that most of them were fishing shallow grass. They were fishing that 5 to 7 foot of water, fishing lipless crankbaits, fishing hybrid hunters, spinner baits, chatterbaits, things like that. However, was that the right depth to win the tournament? Absolutely not. The guy who won it, he caught 40 pounds, and he caught them in about 14 to 18 foot of water. It's give or take a foot or two. I'm assuming he caught them in 15 to 17 if I'm being really specific based off the news article, and so that'd be fairly accurate. So could you go catch bass in 5 to 7 foot? 1000%. Go catch you some fish. I know the wind got up that day, but more to the magic depth, you got to find that perfect depth that those big fish are holding in. You know, pre-spawn, it seems like, and this is a trend that's been going on for the last few years with the emergence of, side imaging, down scan, the live scope, stuff like that, is people are drifting off the bank more and more. I remember 10 or 15 years ago, you could go up in 5 to 7 foot of water and throw a lipless crankbait, and you had a really legit chance to win. Especially on Sam Rayburn, especially in the early spring. I'm not saying you can't win up there anymore, but it's not like it used to be by any means. So when I start talking about magic depth, the only problem about magic depth is it's almost kind of like a needle in a haystack, so to speak, but not always. So magic depth though, Rayburn, he was fishing a little bit deeper than the rest of his competitors. He had found a pile of bass sitting on, whether it was a point, a channel turn, something like that, to where they were held up waiting to push up into that grass to spawn and things like that. So finding and figuring out that magic depth can be the key to the success of you winning. Just because everybody's beating the bank and catching a bunch of bass doesn't mean that's going to be the way to win it. So you've got to really pay close attention to where you're getting the bigger bites. One thing that I really like to do, especially early spring pre-spawn, is look at the quality of the fish. And what I mean by that Is the fish fat? Is the fish healthy? Is it long? Is it skinny? Is it a female? If it's a female, there's a good opportunity there's going to be more females in and around that area, especially if you're offshore. Even in shallow grass, I've noticed over the years that if I'm catching female bass, and you know the difference, I promise you. If you look at the bass, it's going to be really big, healthy, fat, thick. That's going to be a better place to catch fish. So even beyond, technology, the side imaging and things like that, you need to get out there and fish, and you'll figure out places where these fish are staged up. So we've talked about the pre-spawn and some examples of finding where that magic depth is. When you go into the spawn, in my opinion, you're looking in that 3 to 5 foot range. That's going to be your primary depth that most of your bass are going to be shifting in and out of. Do they get a little offshore sometimes that time of year? Absolutely. Is that the way to win? Typically not. However, you can find these little magic offshore places, whether it be a little high spot, a hump, a ridge, a point, places that aren't just going down the bank, going down a bush row. You can find these places by really paying attention, reading your maps. So here is the really nuts and bolts of it. We're getting into the post spawn. That's right, the post spawn. And that's where, in my opinion, just like the pre-spawn, is one of the most crucial times on paying attention to your depth. One thing that I learned early on is, especially on TVA lakes, those fish tend to get way deeper than you could ever imagine first. So the very first place they go is extremely deep. Now let me tell you, I do not think, and I know there's going to be some guys say, well, I caught a 10-pounder doing this, or I caught an 8-pounder doing that. I'm just telling you, I have caught a very few fish past about 25 to 28 foot that are over 10 pounds. And I think that's a very important statistic. I just do not think there's either A, enough light penetration, or B, enough oxygen out there that deep on the bottom for those giant bass. Now, I've caught some, like Lake Falcon, I caught one in like 25 foot that was a 9-pounder, and it was on a foundation. There's always exceptions to the rule. Will you find the big mother lode of giant bass out in 25, 30 foot? I'm just going to tell you, probably not. The key depth for big bass in the post-spawn, in my opinion, is less than 20 foot. You heard that right, less than 20 foot. The deeper you get, like I said, the light penetration, the oxygen level, there's something about it. Those really big bass don't like that depth. So it seems like they kind of shift up a little higher, a little further up on places where it's harder to graph and things like that. You have to actually fish for them. But finding that magic depth and understanding that not every fish is going to go out and fish and live in 30 foot of water is a very good first step in figuring out what magic depth they're in. One of the key depths on Toledo Bend where I grew up was 22 to 23 foot. And I know that's oddly specific. But that's where in July, well, actually more so June, that's where those really good, not big, good fish hang out. So that 3 to 5 pound range fish, they hang out on timber lines, points, ridges, turns, everything you can think of, those fish will hold on it. Now, they're not going to hold on everything. And I think that's very good understanding. You're not going to find bass on every spot you pull up to, and that's okay. However, if you pay attention, really pay attention to where you're catching your better quality fish, you're going to have more success on the water. Now that we've covered the pre-spawn, the spawn, post-spawn, in that summer transition, this is when the bass start moving more shallow. And that's when you got to really pay attention to where those bigger fish are, because they are going to be way more predictable. That's when they start sliding out of even deeper water. They pull up in that 10 to 12 foot range. They start holding on brush piles. They start holding on big pieces of timber, big laydowns, those big stumps that have the big knots on them and everything. You got to really pay attention to that magic depth. This is something that no guys really talk about very often, but to me, it's something that I personally look for every single time I'm on the water. What depth are these fish, the best fish, holding in? Because a lot of times, a lot of lakes, now let me just go ahead and say, there's some lakes that you absolutely can't do that on. Like a Lake Louisville, really terrible lakes And sometimes rivers are the same way. But okay, so we're past the rivers, we're past the really terrible lakes, but you get on a good lake, like a Lake Gunnersville, Sam Rayburn, Toledo Bend, Lake St. Clair, especially Lake St. Clair. You get on St. Clair, and a lot of times those biggest fish, if you find them, they're going to be holding in a very, very specific depth of water. I mean, 1 to 2 foot variable, and that is a huge, huge key because you can eliminate so much water. So one way that I really like to eliminate water, especially when I figure out the depth, one thing that I really like to do is change the color of my contours on my Ultra Map HD on my Garmin's. You know, that makes a humongous difference. So I can actually utilize the exact depth, up to 1 foot contours on there, and I can say, okay, all my bass on this particular lake, let's just say Toledo Bend, for instance, are in 22 to 24. I'm going to mark a specific color on 22 to 24 on my GPS, and that's going to allow me to cover exactly the right depth all the time. I can find little high spots, little intricate places, and that is one way that I utilize my technology to help me find the specific depth. Because, you know, the deal is, at the end of the day, guys, we can have the very best in electronics, we can do all of those things, but it's still about fishing. You got to go out there and you got to read the water. You got to find these intricate patterns that everybody seems to overlook, because I promise you, if you pay attention to these really, really small details, you're going to find more bass than everybody else. You can outwork people. You can really stay ahead of the game. One way to effectively fish that magic depth is to find the right contour. By using the right contour, you can catch more and bigger bass. So one thing I do is use my Garmin EchoMap Ultra and actually color code my contours to the exact magic depth, so I can find those little intricate turns, high spots, flat spots, steep spots. I can find them all over the lake, and it takes all the guessing work out. So what I'm going to do for you guys, and I wouldn't typically do this, is I'm going to walk you through the exact steps of using your EchoMap Ultra and color coding those contours to the effective depth range. I'm actually going to do it on Lake, right where we just came from on the last Bassmaster Open, because I had my map already pulled up, and I want to show you exactly what I did to utilize those depths to help me catch more bass, especially in the magic depth. So as you can see, I already have some contours right here. I've already got them painted up. This is actually where I just left at Lake. So what you do is you go into your menu here, you go to layers, go to chart, go to depth, and right up here you're going to see depth shading right there. See depth shading? Yep, there's depth shading. You hit this little arrow right here, and as you can tell, I can actually mark exactly what depths I'm going for. So in this case, for the sake of this video, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to change my 0 to 5 to 4, or see, that's actually 4,000. I don't want to do 4,000. That might be a little deep. So let's go 0, 0. Let's hit clear. 0, 0, 0, 4. Okay, we got 4 foot. Let's do max depth. How about we scroll over and do 7 foot, just for the sake of this video. So we got 4 and 7, and the color is pink. So as you can tell, look exactly how awesome that contour looks. So at this point, this is when I know that I have figured out the right depth. So then all I do is I focus on this exact depth right here, and that's where I know all the bass are. So I can go right to this depth. And I know exactly where the best 4 to 7 foot range is. And look, you see this little ridge out here? Like, there's a lot of really cool things that you can do on this EchoMap Ultra, and you can utilize it to make yourself a better fisherman and really key in on that magic depth. The EchoMap Ultra is what I've been using for the last year, and I'm telling you right now, guys, like, it's made a humongous difference in my fishing. And I know everybody talks about, like, well, these are big depth finders, you know, we can't afford these, but I'm gonna tell you right now, the EchoMap Ultra is actually a very affordable depth finder, and it's extremely easy to use. One thing that I really like about it, and I'm gonna show you right now, is the ease to remove this thing. So I've got it here, I've got it powered on. I'm gonna power it off real quick. I turn the device off, and I want to show you just how easy it is to remove this thing. Watch this. All you do is press this button, And it's a quick release plate, just like that. Guys, you can't beat that. You got a quick release plate, you got your contours exactly the way you need them. Finding that magic depth is super easy with the EchoMap Ultra. So guys, magic depth, my opinion, is extremely important. Other opinion, nobody talks about it, but you've heard it here. Hopefully you heard it here first. Guys, if you haven't yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I'm going to be bringing you as very much content as I possibly can. But in the meantime, make sure you subscribe to this channel. I can't do this without y'all's, I know it sounds so dumb in some cases, but I need your support here. I need you to be able to say, okay, so-and-so follows me, this guy follows me, that guy follows me. And make sure you turn on that notification bell. And so you get the notification when I am throwing a video out there. I also stream 2 to 3 days a week. I just dropped my schedule on my post, so make sure you check that out for this week's video content. Once again, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned a little bit about magic depth.